Joining me today is New Hampshire State Senator Dan Feltes. Dan, we were talking about the budget and sort of the variety of areas that we need to focus on in this next cycle. I stopped you as we had to go to commercial. I want to keep going with that.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, just as an overarching principle, the basics of education, infrastructure, healthcare, the shared priorities that Democrats and Republicans believe in, and identifying those problems and resolving them in a way that's a constructive way that expands opportunity for everyone, not just the wealthy or well-connected few, is what the approach that I think we need to take on the budget. And we've already heard some my Republican friends talking about more tax giveaways and tax loopholes to business owners and the wealthiest 1%. I think the best approach is to sit down, look at our needs, look at our community's needs, which are in part driving higher and higher local property taxes, and look at that and really funding where we can agree on, our shared priorities.
What's an example of a loophole that you see might be created in this next cycle?
Well, I mean, there's a number of proposals, including to expand net operating loss deduction. There's different exemptions in the business tax code that may be expanded or created.
So this would be really almost what the average person would say, oh my God, this is so boring, I don't want to pay attention to it.
It's really boring,
but it's critical.
It's critical, it's boring, and it has a financial impact. I mean, there were a number of business tax changes in the last session. Some of them I agreed with, some of them I didn't. But right now, John, we're the 7th best in the nation in our overall business tax structure. And the notion that we need to go further to create more loopholes, more tax cuts, more exemptions for the wealthiest, I just fundamentally disagree with. I think we need to stop. We need to look at it. We need to invest in our priorities. We need to look out for workers, working families, our most vulnerable. That's what the budget needs to be structured on, expanding opportunity for everyone, not just those at the top. That's just not a talking point. That's the way it should work. And when you have the highest, we talked about it in segment 1, the highest growing rate of income inequality in the nation, we also have the highest growing rate of child poverty. We don't have the highest child poverty rate, but we have the highest growing rate.
The rate of increase in child poverty
is the highest.
If we keep growing at that rate, we will have the highest, is sort of what you're saying eventually.
Eventually, yeah. And so these are things we need to take care of. I mean, affordable child care, family and medical leave insurance, affordable housing. That's a workforce issue. These are the things that we can address. I think there are good ideas, Republicans and Democrats. We need to focus on that, not stripping away collective bargaining rights for workers, not creating more loopholes for the wealthiest 1%. Focus on the economic issues, the issues that we can reach agreement on.
So affordable housing, what are the policy issues? And this has got to be complicated too, because some of that might be good, but then other people would say, oh, I don't want that affordable housing in my backyard, or, what are the policy that the state could do that would allow us to move forward with more affordable housing? Or what are the barriers to affordable housing?
Sure. Well, just as a backdrop, the two biggest cost drivers for working families is childcare and housing. And right now, you look at Hillsborough and Rockingham County, for example, the median 2-bedroom rental is about $1,300 in both of those counties, which is about the same as some of the collar communities outside of Boston. So if you're graduating college from Boston, you're deciding where to live.
If the rents are the same and jobs are the same,
right, you're probably sticking around in Boston. We got to attract and keep young people and young working families that's demographically and economically needed. So second thing is 2% vacancy rate statewide. What does that mean? That's a really low vacancy rate. That means that it's hard to find
housing,
hard to find housing near where you work, and the rental prices are going up. 15% increase over the last year.
I mean, if there's supply, fundamental economics.
Yep.
If demand is constant, supply declines, prices increase.
You got it. So what can we do? We can start catching up to what other states are doing. Rhode Island just went out with a $50 million bond to capitalize their affordable housing fund, which leverages private and federal dollars to remodel existing housing, to expand existing housing, and to make some new construction. both senior housing, housing with persons with disabilities, and more millennial-style workforce housing. So we can do that. I've submitted a piece of legislation to capitalize our fund at $25 million. That's half of what Rhode Island did. It's half of what Maine did a few years ago. It's not even close to what Massachusetts or Connecticut is doing. We don't even want to talk about those numbers. But we are being left in the dust, and it's a competitiveness issue, not just in terms of housing, but workforce. You need, there's an old phrase that, workforce solution equals jobs plus homes. And, you can say housing is where jobs go to sleep at night.
Okay, so that's a priority. I'd like to keep talking about this, but
Sure.
we're out of time. But we'll have you back as the session unfolds.
Be great to have you.
Thanks so much.
Yep. See ya.
And thank you for joining us for this edition of Capital Connections, your weekly access to politics and policy along the I-89 and I-91 corridors and how it impacts your life in our region. If you've got a comment or an idea for a future show, please send me an email. But join us at the same time next week for another edition of Capital Connections.